So thank you so much to Raj for pulling this great panel together, and for Louisa, of course, for facilitating it. Definitely one issue high on the agenda, also on the recovery after the COVID crisis. So today we also have a few guests. Background on this is, of course, that we have right now the Slovenian presidency, and we'll have the French presidency of the EU very soon. So you can say standing both of these countries with one foot in the COVID crisis and one foot in the recovery. 20% of the 750 billion euros, that is the recovery fund, is dedicated to digital, which has a major factor also in many other areas of investment. So I'm very eager and happy to introduce the first speaker, which is the Slovenian Minister of Public Administration, Koritnik, with us here today. Thank you so much for joining us. You are a key person during the Slovenian presidency for digital. You are a former lawyer and journalist, and as I said, you are standing, with one foot in the COVID crisis and one in the recovery. So we'll also carry a large responsibility on how we spend our money and how it will generate a renewed growth in Europe. So maybe posing the first questions to you. I mean, what will be your overall priorities for the Slovenian presidency, and how do you see digital fitting into all this?
First of all, please allow me to thank you for having me here today and to congratulate you on organizing such a splendid event. The Slovenian presidency will take place, like you said, in a very challenging time of the COVID-19 pandemic, and therefore our main priority will be the Union's resilience to crisis, EU strategic autonomy, and the recovery of the European economy based on digital and green transition. Also, an important part of the conference on the future of Europe will take place during the Slovenian presidency. Furthermore, our focus will be on the European way of life, the rule of law, the security and stability in our neighborhood, with strengthening cooperation within the North Atlantic Alliance and focusing on the Western Balkans and their path towards European integration. We firmly believe that digitalization should make life easier for people and should improve the quality of public services. And therefore, digital transformation, digital technologies, and cybersecurity will be the priorities of our EU presidency. What's included in that? Improving connectivity, developing secure, efficient digital infrastructure, including 5G, safe and open web and cyberspace, resilience to cyber and hybrid threats, improving digital skills, we shouldn't forget that, accessible digital public services, and of course creating a favorable environment for the development, testing, and use of new technologies. The objective of the Union is to increase investment in digitalization and to complete the digital single market as soon as possible. Especially important in that regard would be the areas of artificial intelligence and data. They're really important for the digital transformation and the EU autonomy. So our goal is to accelerate this digital transformation, and that is why we must take advantage of all the development opportunities offered by technology to improve the quality of life of our citizens. During our presidency, we will, of course, organize a significant number of high-level conferences on digitalization and cybersecurity. Let me mention just the most important ones. The main will be a high-level conference on artificial intelligence, which we will organize together with the European Commission in September. Our e-government events will focus on the digital transformation of human-centered public administration, and the cybersecurity conference will focus on cyber resilience of critical infrastructure, cyber crisis management in the Union, cyber diplomacy, and cybersecurity in the Western Balkans. I shouldn't forget the Bled Strategic Forum, which will host high-level representatives of the Union on panels for digital transformation and cybersecurity. The events will be mostly in virtual form, but also in hybrid form and live. So we expect quite a number of participants.
Thank you so much for this. It's super important for everybody to understand the priorities of the presidency. So actually, we also have an esteemed guest from France joining us, which is taking over the presidency just after Slovenia. So thank you so much for joining us, Minister of Digitalization of France, Cédric. I know that you are in Vivatech in Paris. And you and I actually met there 2 years ago and discussed e-identity. So I think we can say that France has been one of the countries that has really looked at the SME. How can we nurture, the ecosystem and the growth of innovative companies? And this is all of what Vivatech is all about. Digital Europe realized that we only have 5% of the world's unicorns in Europe. We set a target for 2025 for 25%, super ambitious. What should we do? I mean, how do we get more wind in our sails with really creating good business environment for SMEs to scale in Europe? Apart from, of course, the funding that we have now, maybe?
Hello, thank you for having me today. Well, I'll do like this, it's going to be better.
Much better.
So thank you for having me today, and thank you for inviting me. I do believe that the question that you just raised is completely critical. We see that the world is dominated by some companies that are either German or American, created over the 20 past years. And if we want Europe to keep up with innovation, if we want Europe to keep up with job creation, we need to have our own champion. So that's what Vivatech is all about. And President Macron initiated a work with both the current Portuguese presidency, the Slovenian incoming presidency. Simon Zak was yesterday here, Minister Simon Zak from Slovenia, and a lot of investors, entrepreneurs, and corporate from Europe in order to assess what we need to do if we want that ecosystem. I would say that basically there are two things that are really important. The first one is financing, the second one is talent. Financing, we need to achieve the capital single market here in Europe as far as financing is concerned. If there is such a power from the US and from China, this is obviously because of the quality of the entrepreneur, but this is also because of the liquidity that they have on their soul. And so we need to accelerate as far as financing is concerned. Second one is talent. All the discussion that we are having, all the competition that's unfolding is about human talent. Even in artificial intelligence, all is about human intelligence. And I do believe, and Mr. Koritnik mentioned that after the pandemics, in the recovery period, Europe has a huge opportunity in order to carve its own way, because we have the quality of living, because we have the infrastructure, because we have the healthcare system, and the pandemic stressed the fact of how important this is. So if we are able to create that European brands around technology, if we are able to do the effort that we need in order to better train and attract talents, then we have a huge opportunity in the coming years, in the coming months and years, to build here in Europe a technological power that is on a par with America or China.
Thank you so much. Maybe just turning one more question to you. I mean, we have seen now 20% of the recovery fund being dedicated to digital. All the countries have now handed in their plan, and we actually see very strong elements of digital in the French plan. Can you talk a little bit about the aspects in the French plan on digital?
Yes, obviously. Well, digital and digitalization of the economy has been a a huge priority, both for that government with an acceleration over the past 3 years, but this is this has been a transpartisan priority over the past 10 years. And we are now reaping the fruit that has been planted a few years ago. I just want to mention one figure, which is we had 3 unicorns at the end of 2017, and now only 3 years after, we have 15 of them, and maybe tens more over in the coming or in the 18 months to come. So there has been an acceleration, which is about reforms, taxation reforms, reform on capital gains, labor market reforms, but also creating a financial and an entrepreneurial ecosystem here that is really at scale in terms of developments of startups. This is something also which is important within the recovery plan. We want to foster that entrepreneurial mood. We want to invest in some key critical technologies with Europe, for instance, as far as digital is concerned, quantum computing, AI, cybersecurity. Boštjan just mentioned the importance of cybersecurity in the world that we know, cloud computing, and so on and so on. There is still something that France is a little bit lagging behind, and this is also something we want to accelerate, and it was also mentioned by Minister Koritnik, is digitalization of traditional SMEs. We have a very vibrant tech ecosystem, but as far as legacies or traditional SMEs are concerned, and that was a real difficulty within the confinement period, we need to accelerate. So there are also some funds that should be challenged toward digitalization of those traditional SMEs, but also towards to fight against digital illiteracy, because at the same time that we invest in innovation, we have to keep everybody on board, even if you're old, even if you have a handicap. And we all know that we have those questions about digital illiteracy all among Europe, but especially in France.
Thank you so much. So turning to you, Minister Koritnik, again. So some might argue that Europe does not have an internal market yet, that governments are doing a little bit their own thing, and when we give money to projects, then it ends up in smaller projects, and we lack that scale. So now everybody has handed in their plan. It has to pass by the Commission. The plans go to the very important summit where we will discuss the plans. Do you see an opportunity of driving, pan-European investment? How will you try to get that scale and agreement across the different countries on finding common ground on digital investments that will allow for real pan-European investment programs? Is that something that you're looking at in the next summit?
By all means, Recovery and Resilience Facility is an engine of development and reform for the whole of the European Union, and multi-country projects, if you want, are important as they develop networks of knowledge, people, solutions for key challenges of the 21st century. We fully support such projects. To encourage multi-country projects, it is important that we focus on the goals and challenges. An easy solution to encourage multi-country projects is to set key strategic achievable goals, provide funds at the EU level that are allocated or earmarked for member states. And member states should be invited to participate well in advance, that they can take part in setting the goals for the multi-country strategic projects. The voice of each state should be heard in the phase of planning and implementation, no matter the size and economic power. The project should be cost-effective, address concrete needs of member states and EU as a whole, and be focused on goals. There is also a need to enhance cooperation in the field of cybersecurity, as there are no isolated islands in the digital oceans, and cyber attacks have no understanding of frontiers and borders. So we should all cooperate, as we are planning to, within the, for instance, quantum computing infrastructure projects.
Thank you so much. So at least, also just to share a little bit of knowledge, we did a study of each year we give a prize to the most innovative tech unicorns in Europe. And we did a survey last year of 60 of them to find out what is the biggest barrier. And one of the things that they said is, it is too difficult to grow in Europe. It is too difficult because we have too many barriers and regulation. And at least from our point of view, it's super important to pass the message also to the presidencies that we need you to collaborate. We need you to do things in one way across Europe. This will really depend. And I think just to quote you, Minister O, we need a capital, we need competences, and we need one common market to succeed here. So thank you for your leadership. Now, jumping a little bit into the more regulatory agenda and turning to you, Mr. O. Do you think that the new proposal on AI, do you think it strikes the right balance between promoting innovation and keeping citizens safe? Have we hit the right balance, and how do we align, with other continents on this kind of regulation?
Well, I do think that the proposal on AI that was set on the table by the Commission is balanced. And that was really important that we were able to find that edgeway between innovation and regulation. Obviously, regulation is needed, both for obvious reasons, but also for sustainability reasons. We have a democratic issue about technology to some extent in Europe, and if we want technology to be acceptable for our citizens, then we need to ensure them that their basic right and the human-centric approach is not threatened. But what we have to bear in mind always, and especially in AI, is that the biggest thing that Europe is lacking today is innovation. If I was having a discussion with Eric Schmidt, who's in charge of designing the American strategy for the future in AI, and the Americans have a huge fear to be outperformed by China in terms of investment. They have a fear to be outperformed, although they're already a huge step ahead of us in terms of AI investment. So what should we think if the Americans are afraid of being outperformed? So this is why we need a regulation. The proposal is, I do think, balanced, but we need to accelerate on innovation with scale and pace, because this is what this is about. There is a huge worldwide competition. There are two major players. There will be some new technologies as far as embedded AI is concerned, as far as AI in some vertical is concerned, with edge computing and so on, that could reset the competition to some extent. But we need to jump on the bandwagon, and we need to be able to answer from an innovative point of view. Having said that, again, we need regulation, and the regulation that is proposed by the Commission is balanced. So this is important that this is not modified too much in the coming months.
Thank you so much. So some might argue that the US has the money, China has the data, and Europe has the regulation. It might be a little bit a joke, but maybe a little bit of truth in it. So Minister Koritnik, what are your priorities for artificial intelligence, and how can we ensure that we become, the home of trustworthy AI, but also of much more AI investment and great innovation and growth?
Well, if I were to continue your joke, I would say with regulation. However, the field of artificial intelligence is particularly important for Slovenia. We are really proud of the first UNESCO International Research Center for AI, IRCAI, that is established in Ljubljana. And following 40 years of experience and research in this field, we would like to include those experiences in our presidency program. And for us, it is crucial to create a high level of trust in artificial intelligence. In order to do this, AI should be developed and used in a way that is responsible, focused on common interests and on people. And with artificial intelligence, trust is a must. We will emphasize ethical technology, safety, fundamental rights and values of EU citizens. And we shouldn't forget, AI is a means, it's not an end. It offers immense potential in health, transport, energy, agriculture, tourism, cybersecurity, of course. And what we should provide is that the new rules are applied directly in the same way across all member states. This is how we create unified and trustworthy environment. Of course, it is also important to maximize investment in research, like Mr. O emphasized, and we should do our best to retain and attract the best AI researchers. Therefore, we urgently need to create more synergies, networks between several European AI research centers and coordinate their efforts. And like I always emphasize, we should focus on digital skills to fill the competence gaps. And also, it is essential that public administrations and the public sector rapidly begin to introduce AI-based products and services into their activities.
Thank you so much. Turning to the data agenda. Minister O, the new European data spaces will most likely be launched under the French presidency. I mean, it's definitely one of the things that DigitalEurope is speaking in favor of. We see this will enable thousands of SMEs to enter the data economy. I mean, what are the sectors that you think Europe where we have the greatest potential?
Well, at first, I just want to jump on a question that you raised to Mr. Koritnik. When you say the Americans have the money, we just have to bear in mind that it is our money. This is European excess of savings that is financing American public deficit and going into American VC funds indirectly. So that's why a single capital market is so needed. That if we want our savings to finance our economy, we need to strengthen the capital market. So having said that, I do believe that the sectors in which Europe can be strong are the sectors where Europe has strong players and multinationals that are leading the way. And I would so that's why I would mention energy, I would mention mobility, I would mention cybersecurity, and probably in all the verticals, aerospace, because as far as B2C AI is concerned, I do think that the Americans and Chinese, because of the size of their data lakes, have taken an important advance that will be complicated to bridge. But as far as those verticals, I mean, energy, mobility, transportation, cybersecurity, and so on are concerned, aerospace, we have the data lakes, and there's the positions are to be seized. So we need now to invest in those data spaces with big companies, with SMEs, in order to build our own knowledge, because we still have healthcare is also a domain in which Europe has a role to play, and we saw how innovative Europe was in terms of vaccines. But we have the position are to be taken now. So this is why those initiatives around GaiaX and data spaces are so important. We need our industrial players, our big companies to work with our startup, to work with our researchers in order to build that knowledge around data in B2B sectors in a different way that what we were not able to do in the B2C sectors.
Thank you. Let me stay with you for a second. So, as you most likely know, we have launched this big study showing that potential disruption of data flows might hamper the European economy with 2 trillion and 2 million jobs. We are big, great believers in the GDPR, but we also see problems right now with disruption of data flows for sectors that are actually today functioning mainly by using also data flows. We know that 86% of the European growth is being generated outside Europe. So, I mean, now we've had Biden in town. We have France speaking still, about strategic autonomy. What does it mean? I mean, how do we engage with key partners, and what is strategic autonomy to you?
Well, strategic economy is independence in our choices. and I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting that we've seen so far over the past 20 years the emergence of new champions that were uniquely or almost uniquely Americans, and the technological layer on which our economy is relying, for instance, the cloud computing, is in the hand of only private players that are all American and Chinese. And the notion that France is carrying, but I do believe that we have the same approach with Germany and so on, is not to go for an economy that is more closed. The notion is that we have to be able to have our own giants that sets our own standards. If we want to be at the table of those who are designing the standards, obviously we need regulation, but at first we need innovation. Otherwise, at the end of the day, the power and the way the economy and our democracy to some extent is functioning, and we saw that during the previous election, will be in the hand of either private players that are non-European, based on non-European values, but also could also be in the hand of players that are more influenced by non-democratic countries. So if we want to keep the choice that we take collectively valid, then we need to have our own champions. We don't have any problem with foreign companies operating there, and we do believe that globalization is a good thing. But it's a good thing as long as we are able to play the match and we are not completely outperformed.
Yes, I mean, and I guess also our major trading partners has a big interest in a strong digital Europe. So now some might argue that, the private sector globalized and governments didn't, and now Europe is leading on a lot of fronts in digital, at least digital rule sets, which we totally support. And we are at that phase where we need to also strengthen our footprint with companies and innovation. But how do you see, Minister Koritnik, the opportunities for the Slovenian presidency to collaborate with other international partners?
Well, the Slovenian presidency is well aware of the impact that new technologies have on all member states, European Union and the whole world. And faced with the rapid technological development, global policy context, the EU must act as one to harness the many opportunities and address challenges in a future-proof manner. We support addressing digital in a European way, and this means human-centric approach through solidarity, prosperity, sustainability based on empowerment of its citizens and businesses. Also, it means ensuring the security and resilience of its digital ecosystem and supply chains. And we believe that this approach will provide Europe a leading role in setting the global gold standard. Of course, international collaboration is crucial. And in order to actively contribute, the Slovenian presidency will host a high-level conference on AI in September, I already mentioned, and the conference will present activities in the field of AI in the light of international initiatives and EU activities. The event will focus on how to turn Europe into a global hub of excellence and trust in AI, and on how to advance trustworthy AI on the global stage. And this can be an example for other fields of cooperation.
So allow me to run a few minutes over time. I hope the audience is interested. So maybe one more question for you, Minister Koritnik. So what did you think that we learned on digital through the crisis, and also on COVID tracking apps, etc.? I mean, what are the biggest digital learnings of the COVID crisis for you?
Well, I always use a saying, they all knew it cannot be done, and then one came that didn't know that, and he succeeded. So that's, I believe, what the pandemic showed us. For instance, I'm in public administration minister. Before it was, we cannot work remotely, we cannot work from home. Now I can't get the people back to the offices because they only see that as an option. So it was a shift in the minds the pandemic pushed people out of their comfort zone, and I believe it's a positive result of the pandemic.
Yeah. And I think maybe from my chair, I would say also the green certificates that we create across border might trigger a much larger harmonization and alignment of public administration across Europe, which would only be great news, of course, for the citizens and for the businesses. So maybe turning to the last question to you, Minister O, looking at your upcoming presidency, you will be a very busy man with all the digital files on the table. If you should mention a few that you think is really kind of crucial on the digital area for France to bring to the table and to finish, or at least make a contribution on, what would those be?
Well, I will mention two things. One on the innovation side, one on the regulation side. On the innovation side, we launched the day before yesterday that Scale Up Europe initiative. And I do believe that as far as immigration of talents is concerned, and on being able to work around a financing initiative that would help emerge venture capital funds of the size of 1 billion or 2 billion euros is something that we definitely want to work on. I think there are only 2 or 3 or 5, I don't know, but that's not enough VC funds that are higher than 1 billion euro in Europe, which is a huge issue, both for innovation but also for sovereignty. As far as regulation is concerned, we have 2 important texts on the table that will be worked on by the Slovenian presidency. And as much as we've been joining forces with the Portuguese presidency, we want to help the Portuguese presidency on making progress on both the Digital Services Act and on the Digital Market Act. And if I were to choose between the 2 of them, I would say that to some extent, I think the Digital Market Act is one of the most important texts in terms of regulation that we've had to discuss over the past 50 years, because all the problems that are raised by the platform economy, be it democratic problems, hate speech problems, privacy problems, are at the end of the day pointing the business model issue, and the fact that a lot of platforms are in an oligopoly system, and that if we want to foster innovation, if we want to be able to tackle a lot of democratic issues, then we have to be able to unlock those markets. And as much as the Americans are doing that with for instance, the appointment of Lisa Khan at the head of the FTC, the Digital Market Act, in terms of regulation, economic regulation, competition regulation within Europe, is a very important text. I hope that we will be able to make a lot of progress under the Slovenian presidency to close the deal if this is possible, and if not, we hope to close the deal during the French presidency.
Thank you so much. So closing off, trying to summarize all these excellent points that you made, I would say Europe needs capital, competence, and a common market to be able to scale and to be able to create speed, open strategic autonomy, and a collaborative spirit towards the rest of the world. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your great leadership. We are eager to support you on the digital agenda. And of course, we will share also the latest report on data flows with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for joining Digital Europe in these important discussions. And good luck with the presidencies, and let us know if there is anything we can do to support. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So me closing off this great event, big thank you. I know that we have an average 600 views at the moment. I hope that you enjoyed the discussions. Diversity of view is what makes good solutions and policy discussions. We try to enhance that, me and my team, and Digital Europe, and not least our 35,000 members represented in the digital economy in Europe. So let me ask you to, 1, remember to evaluate our efforts in the survey. 2, give us good advice if there is something that we need to do better. 3, remember to go to the booth. We have great health booth, and we also have a lot of the materials on digital stories on how digital can improve the life of the citizens of Europe and the world. So go through the exhibition area. I would like to thank you for listening in. Digital Europe is committing to make a better world through digital. It is not always easy, but we are a part of the solution to a lot of the challenges of the world today. Thank you for listening and have a great day.